On May 29th, 2013, my husband and I were blessed with twins. I carried them for 35 weeks, and it was crazy. It was 8 months of a bed rest pregnancy. So much stress, so much pain, and it took its toll on the entire family. The funny thing is that doctors told us that we wouldn't be able to conceive at all, but we guess God had a different plan. Firstborn was our daughter, Zaya Simone. She was only 3 pounds and 11 ounces, but her name means perfected by God, and that she is. And here you see our son. That's Uriyah Shevis. He was only 4 pounds and 2 ounces, and his name means light or flame of God. And you'll see just why we picked that name for him and how it's so fitting. Shortly after Uriyah was born, the doctors noticed that he kept going into distress. He was having problems breathing on his own and maintaining his feeds, so the doctors kept him in the NICU unit for strict observation. For the first 7 weeks of Uriyah's life, he stayed in the NICU unit. It was so tough seeing him that way. Some days he felt better than others, and other days you could tell he just wasn't himself. It was tough, but as a family, we were able to make it through. Then finally, after 7 weeks, he was able to come home and he was released. We were so happy, and our family finally felt complete. Uriyah was home with us for about a week and a half, and then we started noticing that he kept getting sick and he wasn't getting any better. So, after praying and realizing what was going on, we headed back to the hospital. At the end of August, Uriyah was admitted back into the hospital. At the children's hospital, no doubt. It was a great environment, but we didn't want to be there, watching our son be sick. We practically moved into the hospital at this point because we didn't want to leave Uriyah's side. We stayed there every day with them, as the doctors ran test after test trying to figure out what exactly was wrong with Uriyah. They found out that he had a paralyzed right diaphragm and an underdeveloped lung that was giving him pulmonary hypertension. I know I keep saying it was tough, but you guys have no idea what it's like to see your son in a state and he can't help himself, and there's nothing you can do to help him. You just have to have faith that the doctors are going to take care of him the way that he needs to be taken care of, and that God is using them to save your son's life. Finally, at the early part of September, the doctors figured that they needed to go ahead and do surgery in order for Uriyah to get better. I'm telling you, this was a true test. Knowing that our son is merely an infant and that he would have to undergo the knife, he stayed in the ICU for 2 whole days. But, again, like I said, we had faith and we watched our boy go through that, stayed with him, prayed over the staff that was working with him, and we knew that God was going to bring him out. The best part, though, was seeing the manifestation of prayer, watching Uriyah come through recovery. He got to know all the nurses, and all the nurses drooled over him because he was so cute, and we finally got to see his little personality coming out and getting him reacquainted with his twin again. He didn't miss a beat, neither did she. Finally, towards the end of September, Uriyah finally came home, and he's doing great. He still has a little bit of oxygen. That's why you guys always see his breathing tube in his nose there. And coming from that surgery, I mean, can you imagine having your diaphragm fixed, having a feeding tube put in your stomach, and they also did something called a fundoplication, where they wrap his stomach around his esophagus to make sure that he doesn't have any reflux. I'm telling you, this little boy right here, he's a soldier. And every time I think about what he's been through, the testimony that he's going to have, and everything that God is doing in him, it brings me to tears. I just thank God for our son. knowing that he has a perfect plan for Uriah and that everything's going to be okay with our boy. I thank God for Uriah. I can't wait for him to grow and tell his testimony for himself.